Let's go to Leanne now, who has something we all need: free legal advice.
Well, it's really interesting, Michael, and today we're talking about insurance, and when I was looking at Scarlett Johansson's footwear, I was thinking, well, she may need additional insurance, you know? We're with Dave Hollingsworth, who's a personal injury lawyer, but he takes the time to answer a variety of questions for us, and we have a lot of your questions today, broad spectrum, tons of different topics, but the one that you've chosen to sort of start with relates to insurance, because just this week you've had two people approach you with different sort of insurance issues.
Right, yeah, well, I've had a number of them, Leanne, and I guess to set the stage, anytime you're involved in a car accident and you're making an insurance claim, there are typically three key areas. One is if your vehicle's been damaged, you go to your own insurance company to get it fixed, or if it's been a total loss, they pay you out the total loss. The other thing people wonder about is, well, if I've been hurt and it's someone else's fault, can I make a claim against them? And that is the liability portion of their insurance policy that you make a claim against. And most people have about $1 million of liability insurance. It's a very good idea, and it's not that much more expensive each year to get a $2 million liability insurance policy.
And that applies to everyone. So what's the difference in price on average?
Oh, you know, and you'd have to talk to your broker, but it's really not a significant
so it's about
difference in price.
It can be about $120 to get that much more coverage. But why is it so important?
Well, it's important because, Leanne, you know, not all cases are worth $1 million, but if there are multiple people injured in one accident, so 5 people accessing one insurance policy, then you can get over the $1 million pretty quickly. And if you do get over the $1 million insurance policy, then the at-fault person, their own assets like their house or anything that they own could be at risk of being taken away from them. So that's pretty important. And I had a guy call me this week. You know, he was a cyclist and he was cycling through a green light, and somebody made a left-hand turn and struck him, and he fractured his wrist, required surgery, was off work, and he called me and he said, "Listen, Dave, I know I need some compensation, but I feel really badly suing this person." And you know, I reminded him that it's not this person who's going to be paying, it's the liability insurance policy that will be responding and paying anything, provided there's adequate insurance, which normally there is. But so that's a key thing for people to understand. That's why we have liability insurance, just in case there's a mistake.
And you also wanted to explore accident benefits at length.
Yeah, well, that's the third area, accident benefits. And that accident benefits are attached to your own insurance policy. So it doesn't matter if you're in an accident, even if it's your fault, or it doesn't matter whose fault it is, you access your own insurance policy to get these accident benefits. And they include things like, if you're off work, you can get an income replacement, medical rehabilitation, like if you need physio or crutches or medications, attendant care if you require nursing care or something like that. And there are other benefits that you can get access to.
And sometimes in a settlement, you said if people don't access the accident benefits, then it sort of would lead one to believe that.
Well, it can be, it's bad for a lot of reasons. Number one, of course, you want to access any medical care you have access to get yourself back on your feet.
But if you need the care.
Yeah, if you need the care, you want to use it. You know, it's there to be used, you've paid for it, and look, you want to get back to your old self again. But if you do have a claim against an at-fault driver, one of the first things that their insurance companies asks you is, well, let's see your accident benefits file. What have you done to get yourself better? And, you know, they look, and if you've participated actively in your own rehab, then that looks good on you. And if you haven't, then they say either A, you're not hurt, or B, if you're not better now, it's because you haven't participated fully in your own rehabilitation.
So something to consider. So definitely look at, with your insurer, upping your liability.
Well, yeah, up the liability, and you can also up your accident benefits. And I don't know if you want me to talk about that, but we can...
Well, does it sort of relate to our first question?
Yeah, well, I saw the first question, so I know it does relate to that.
Were you looking at the first question?
Yeah.
Okay, the first question. I just received a renewal for my insurance. I have all sorts of options. Which additional benefits are worth it?
Right. So with accident benefits, a couple of years ago, they really cut back the generosity of the benefits that are available. So, for example, if you're off work, you're entitled to a maximum of $400 a week for income replacement, which, you know, it's nice to get that $400, but I had a guy this week who was making $1,000 a week, which was great, but he needed that $1,000 to pay his bills.
We spend what we earn.
Yeah, exactly. And now he's off and he's getting $400 a week, and that $600 shortfall is causing him to really not be able to pay his bills, and he's desperate and he's borrowing money. Meanwhile, for a very insignificant fee, and that's where it's about $120 a month. You can up a lot of these optional benefits. You can get not just $400, you can ask for $600, $800, or even $1,000 a week for income replacement. So that's a key thing to consider when you renew your policy.
We are
David Hollingsworth to answer your legal questions.
And Dave was actually surprised, Michael, that Tom Hanks would have been selected for jury.
Yeah, well, I think that sometimes they'll try to avoid having somebody with a really strong personality on a jury, Leanne, because that person will tend to take over.
And he'd be distracting.
He would be distracting.
Just his
He could
presence.
be. He'd have them laughing.
Now, we should say we are not insurance brokers, so any of the numbers that we've given you for liability insurance, those were just sort of throw-in-the-dark guesses for the insurance portion of Dave's segment. But we're moving on to other questions, and they're going to be rapid fire. Are you ready? You've had a lot of really great questions for David, and of course we have a link on our website to David's website if you have other questions and topics we haven't discovered. This one is an interesting one. My spouse won't leave the home. Can I kick them out and change the locks?
The short answer is no. If it's the matrimonial home, then it doesn't matter who owns it, who's the titled owner to the home. Both spouses have equal right to occupy the home. So what would happen is you'd have to get a court order having one spouse removed. And so, you'd have to go to court, apply, and then the judge would decide which
reason.
Yeah, the judge would just, well, there'd have to be a reason, so it has to be, I guess, confirmed that the situation can't continue as it is. They're clearly living separate and apart. Somebody has to leave for some reason, and the judge decides who. If there's any violence, of course, immediately contact the police, though, I would say.
Okay, thank you. That was a different question. And now we're actually heading from that question to matrimonial bliss of 40 years. My parents have owned a home together for more than 40 years. As they get older, they will need a will for the house, or will they need a will for the house to pass it on to the other if one of them dies?
Well, that depends. In Ontario, there are typically two ways that people own property, either as tenants in common, which means that they, one may own 50% and the other owns 50%. But in most cases where it's a matrimonial home where people are married, they own it as joint tenants, which means it carries they both own 100% and it carries with it the right of survivorship. So if one should pass away, the other one automatically owns 100% of the home. Still a good idea to have a will, because in your will you name an estate trustee who is the person who's designated to handle all of your affairs. But quite specifically, if they are joint tenants, then the one spouse passes, the other one gets it automatically.
Very interesting. Now here's one relating to car accidents. I was in a car accident a year and a half ago. Is it too late to sue? What are my options?
Okay, well, the first thing you do if you're in a car accident if you've been injured, is you want to access accident benefits. We've already been over that. But if you want to sue an at-fault driver in Ontario, you have 2 years from the date of the accident. Subject to certain exceptions, you have 2 years from the date of the accident to commence your lawsuit. So a year and a half, you still have half a year. You want to get it in within the 2 years, though.
And this may tie into our next question, which is, my son was hit by a car and broke his leg. He wasn't crossing at a crosswalk, and the police said it was his fault, meaning the son's fault. I think the driver was speeding. Is there anything we can do?
Yes, there is. In Ontario, the Highway Traffic Act would govern this situation, and there is a section of the Highway Traffic Act that I deal with quite a bit. It's section 193. And so in most cases, if you're a plaintiff, if you've been injured and you want to sue somebody, it's up to you to prove that they have done something negligent. But if it's a motor vehicle and a pedestrian or a cyclist, there is what's called a reverse onus, which means it's up to the driver to establish that he or she didn't do anything improper to cause the accident. And so if there's any evidence of speeding or someone being distracted, and then maybe the driver is in part at fault. And if I can just elaborate, in an accident, you can have somebody who's 100% at fault, somebody who's 0% at fault, but you can also have a split of liability as well, where maybe one person's 50, the other person's 50, and then so what you're entitled to recover is 50%.
Very interesting. I'm sneaking this question in because it's so interesting, but we'll have to be fast.
Yes.
My neighbor is a hoarder and stores a bunch of stuff, a bunch of junk along the side of her house. It's an eyesore, and it's bringing down the property values of the whole neighborhood. What can we do to get her to clean it up?
Okay, first thing, obviously, try to speak with her about it. Assuming that doesn't work, City of Ottawa has a website, deals with the property standards bylaws. You can go in. There's a place where you can launch a complaint. I believe you can do it online. You explain what the complaint is, and they'll go out and assess it. You should know, though, that I think that cannot be done anonymously. but they'll go out and they'll take a look for you.
Okay, thanks a ton, Dave Hollingsworth. There's a link on our website to Dave's. If you have questions, send them along and we will get to them.